Tonight, a landmark moment in the battle against Scotland's drugs deaths crisis. The UK's first drugs consumption room will open in Glasgow.
If implemented properly, these services are actually very successful in engaging the target population of people who inject.
Also making the headlines, an economic boost or reckless endeavour. Plans for a controversial new oil development in the North Sea are given the go-ahead.
Campaigners fight to save leisure facilities earmarked for closure in North Lanarkshire.
And in sport, it's all eyes on the League Cup as teams look to join Hearts at Hampden for the semi-finals. I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. It's been a long-fought campaign, but the introduction of a drugs consumption room has finally been given the go-ahead in Glasgow. The facility in the city's East End will allow drug users to take illegal substances under medical supervision without the risk of criminal prosecution.
Campaigners say it could be life-changing in Scotland's battle against the crisis of drug deaths, which saw more than 1,000 people die in the last year. Our reporter Vanessa Taff has had a look at the site.
Tucked away at the edge of Glasgow's city centre, beside a heroin drug treatment facility, a UK first. This site will become home to a safe drug consumption room, offering a clean and controlled space to use illegal drugs.
If we had the safer drug consumption facility, it would look very similar to this setup. We would have this area, they'd have injecting booths and there'd be healthcare staff on site.
Anyone coming here to use drugs will be supervised, with staff like Lynn nearby to step in if someone needs help.
Will the rooms be as clinical as this in the safe consumption room?
So in terms of the booths will be quite clinical, and that's just simply if there's any blood spills, it's very easy to clean, but the aftercare area will be quite different. It'll be much softer, much more comfortable and relaxed environment for people to recover from their injection and therefore be able to engage with some of the wider wraparound services we'll have there.
And those services will include health checks, homeless support and information about drugs recovery.
What the international evidence base suggests is that if implemented properly, these services are actually very successful in engaging the target population of people who inject, particularly those who inject in public places in the vicinity of those services.
Campaigners have been lobbying the government for a consumption room in Glasgow since 2016. The man who ran the city's first but unofficial site wants to see the government go further still.
I use drugs publicly in Glasgow myself, in my late teens, and without a shadow of a doubt, these facilities would have helped me. Like I was injecting in the same conditions that people are injecting in today in Glasgow. Filthy conditions and alleyways.
We absolutely cannot have a situation where we spend years and years evaluating one service without the introduction of any other facilities anywhere in Scotland. So we definitely wouldn't want it to prevent other services from opening.
The approval of this space comes after the Lord Advocate said they won't prosecute anyone who comes here for using illegal drugs. What remains unclear is whether someone carrying those drugs on the way there could be arrested for possession.
It's precisely that operational detail that we now need to work on and get a clear idea from our legal advisors about what that statement of prosecution policy from the Lord Advocate, what that will give us. And what, if anything else, we need to talk to Police Scotland about. We wouldn't be opening the doors without that kind of without an understanding.
The Scottish Government has committed to funding the facility at a cost of £2.3 million for the first year. It's hoped that over time, the consumption room will rid the streets of things like discarded needles. Getting the local community on board is the next step.
Communities will already be impacted by public injecting. My ward is just next door in Denniston, and I get complaints on a daily basis of people injecting in closes, back courts and stuff like that. So really we want to remove and reduce that risk as much as possible.
Recruitment for staff will begin next April, with the facility expected to open in the summer, marking a move away from punishment and towards support.
Vanessa, you spoke about getting the local community on board. How will that be done?
It's important to say, I guess, that a lot of people who live near Hunter Street or around the local area will use drugs and will probably use the facility. I've been reassured by a lot of the people I've spoken to who are involved in this project that the local community, local people, local businesses will be at the heart of the project. So tomorrow night there is a community council meeting and there will also be drop-in sessions as well. There's also going to be quite a widespread consultation which they'll publish the results of too.
How about the international examples of drug consumption rooms? How have they worked?
Well, it's probably important to say, first of all, that the UK government do not support this facility that's in Glasgow, but in other cities where they are up and in operation, the evidence is overwhelming that they are saving lives. There's also proof as well that crime isn't going up in those areas and that people who need help the most are getting it, and crucially, they're also getting into recovery as well.
Vanessa, thank you.
It has split political opinion and sparked protests in the debates over the future of oil and gas drilling in the North Sea. And today, the controversial Rosebank oil field off the coast of Shetland was given the go-ahead. The firm behind the development says it will help energy security and provide an economic boost. But climate activists say it's reckless. Stephen Brown reports.
Beyond this scenic Shetland coastline lies a political and climate storm. And beneath its waters, there's millions of barrels worth of oil. The Rosebank oil field has been the focal point for countless protests, climate campaigners who warned the damage it would do. But today the regulator finally gave it the green light. The main stakeholder in the field says it will help with energy security in the years to come.
Getting to net zero is a very, very important part of our company's mission. At the same time, we will still be using oil and gas in the transition and actually beyond 2050. Then it really matters where these hydrocarbons are coming from and how they are produced. And in the case for Rosebank, they will be produced at the lowest possible emissions.
The Rosebank field is the largest undeveloped field in the North Sea, more than 300 million barrels of oil. It could produce around 69,000 barrels a day, or around 8% of the UK's daily projected output between 2026 and the end of this decade.
We are a net importer of oil. Overall, we need oil and gas for the future of our economy. This is something which has been acknowledged by the Independent Climate Change Committee, and I think it's really important that we support production here. Like I said, that means jobs, that means investment in places like Scotland.
But despite that claim of investment in Scotland, the First Minister today hit out at the decision.
This is the wrong decision to have been made, and I've expressed my concerns about Rosebank going ahead for some time now. I think most reasonable people are in our position. We don't think the tap should be turned off tomorrow. There shouldn't be a cliff edge, but neither is the North East or Scotland's future in unlimited oil and gas extraction.
It's a field that has faced a large backlash from climate campaigners. And again today it sparked protests in Scotland, with opposition parties angry at its approval.
I think it's absolutely disgraceful that UK government have taken this decision. It will condemn future generations to climate chaos, and it sends absolutely the wrong signal when we need major industry to be investing in renewables now, not doubling down on fossil fuels.
The argument from the UK government and the sector is that drilling in the North Sea helps provide more stable energy in the face of an uncertain market, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Today, 75% of our energy comes from oil and gas, and while we still use it, surely it makes sense to continue to produce our own domestically. And if we could, I think the future has to be oil and gas and renewables during the transition, not oil and gas or renewables.
Rosebank goes to the heart of the debate about oil and gas. If more drilling in the North Sea brings about economic prosperity and energy security, but what it does to us meeting our climate targets and the emissions we create by burning fossil fuels. The decision on Rosebank may end months of speculation about whether or not it would get the go-ahead, but it won't end the debate on the future of oil and gas.
There's tens of thousands of people that have spoken out against Rosebank already, politicians from every major party in the UK, hundreds of civil society organisations, artists, activists, just ordinary people. So we're not going to give up on the fight now. We're going to continue to do everything in our power to stop this disastrous oil field from going ahead.
High household bills of late have made more of us question where and how we get our energy from. And it will be a question that will face politicians and the energy sector for years to come. Stephen Brown, STV News.
Hundreds of school support staff gathered outside the Scottish Parliament today as a dispute over pay continues. Children across much of the country face disruption, with many schools closed as the strike entered its second day.
Well, today it emerged that money used to compensate survivors of historical abuse would be used to fund the £80 million pay offer. Caroline Lewis reports.
On the second day of walkouts, the fight came to the doors of Parliament. Travelling across the country, hundreds turned out to demand fair pay.
I'm hoping that the parents and the staff and everybody in the school communities across the whole of Scotland will see the bigger picture, that we're actually out trying to get better services for their children and them.
We do an essential job. We are essential to the teachers. If we are not in the room, they are not do their teaching.
Latest deal rejected by Unison would see workers offered between 6 and 10%, with the lowest paid getting an uplift of around £2,000.
The offer that's been put on the table is paltry. They're getting treated with no respect whatsoever. They're completely cavalier attitude from COSLA. They need to get back round the table and discuss the realities with the people that matter.
In a statement, COSLA said, "We have listened to our trade unions, met their asks and worked with Scottish Government to put an incredibly strong £500 million pay package on the table and urged the union to call off the strike." Some schools were open today, with council workers plugging gaps. But one teacher from Eastern Bartonshire, who asked to remain anonymous, said the decision to reopen had put pupils at risk.
We are now in a situation where we feel unsafe at work. We feel that our pupils are at risk of serious harm and not receiving the support that they need. It seems negligent.
The council responded by saying risk assessments had been undertaken with unions and schools, and the safety of staff and pupils was the main priority. The strike continues tomorrow. Caroline Lewis, STV News.
Well, let's take a look at other stories now. And a rapist who was controversially spared jail after attacking a 13-year-old girl has claimed he is the victim of a very significant miscarriage of justice. Lawyers of Sean Hogg told the Court of Criminal Appeal that the judge who presided over his trial did not follow correct legal procedures to establish guilt. Hogg was found guilty of attacking his victim in Dalkeith Country Park on various occasions in 2018 when he was 17.
My client in April of this year was left devastated. As far as she is concerned, she came forward, she told the truth, she spoke up, she believes the police and the jury did its duty. There is much more she wishes to say today, but it would be inappropriate to comment further until the appeal court issues its judgment.
Travel warnings are in place across the country as Storm Agnes hits Scotland. Gusts of up to 75 miles per hour are expected later, with a Met Office yellow weather warning in effect until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Network Rail is enforcing speed restrictions on trains, and motorists are asked to plan ahead. Flood alerts are also in place.
If you're in or around areas where there's drains or gullies that might block and cause local problems, it's being aware of those. So in the Glasgow area, it's more the kind of disruption to travel type impacts that we're expecting due to the high rainfall rates.
A mother whose son was physically restrained at school has told STV News a new law is needed now to protect children with additional needs. Beth Morrison says her son Callum is still traumatised by the incident more than a decade on.
She's backing a proposed bill which would require all incidents of restraint to be reported and provide more training for teachers. Here's our political reporter, Laura Alderman.
It's terrible, you're a wee devil.
Beth and her son Callum are incredibly close. Their lives changed forever following an incident at Callum's special education school in Dundee 13 years ago.
Callum was riding a bike in his special school. He has epilepsy, cerebral palsy, he's autistic and he's got learning disabilities. So his level of understanding isn't great. So when he refused to do as he was told, as the teacher said, she bodily pulled Callum off the bike.
Beth says Callum was then restrained on the ground by 4 adults until he lost consciousness and then came home covered in bruises. After years of campaigning, new guidelines on the use of physical restraint in schools were introduced, but Beth says they don't go far enough.
We've got to protect these children in law. I have almost 1,800 families just in Scotland alone whose children have been subjected to this. The median age is 6.
A bill is now being proposed at Holyrood.
What we need to do is have those guidelines put on a statutory basis so that it's not optional, it's not open to interpretation, that we have clarity. But that's also why we need data recording. It's also why we also need national training standards.
Eigenlijk zo werkelijk krijg je zo werkelijk als people feel vernemen of people will go kick about it as well.
Teaching unions welcome the recording of incidents but have concerns about some parts of the proposed bill.
But as for compulsory training of teachers around restraint, that's something that we absolutely oppose because we believe that it puts teachers at risk, it puts young people at risk, it puts teachers at risk in terms of their health and safety.
The Scottish Government says it will consider the responses and insists restraint in schools must only ever be used to prevent harm. The consultation closes on Friday, but the mental scars of what happened to Callum will never fade.
Every day he talks about it. He was in the school because he needed extra love and care, and he didn't get that.
Laura Alderman, STV News, Edinburgh.
With just over a week until polling day, candidates in the Rutherglen and Hamilton West by-election have clashed in their first televised debate. The SNP, Labour and the Scottish Conservatives questioned each other on Scotland Tonight on potential tax rises and scrapping the UK benefits cap. The by-election was triggered by the ousting of the former MP Margaret Ferrier for breaking COVID rules. Our political correspondent Ewan Petrie reports.
This debate gave rivals the chance to cross-examine each other. The SNP candidate was accused of backing an increase in council tax.
There is a consultation and people are clear to put in their views. Now, you're sitting here today, you are not being straight with people when you're speaking about this. Labour in Wales have done the same. I think the real question, Michael, is one for you. We are for fair taxation. If Labour are not for fair taxation, what are Labour for?
The Labour candidate faced claims he had changed his mind over the two-child benefit cap.
What's your position today? We've been very clear that a full review of universal credit is what's necessary. On particular the two-child limit, what's your position? The two-child is part of the universal credit review. Your party's introduced it. We opposed the two-child cap throughout its introduction in the House of Commons. You introduced a policy. You've asked me about a horrific policy that you've introduced.
Both Labour and the SNP attacked what they called economic mismanagement by the UK Conservative government.
Since Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister, we've seen interest rates frozen, we've seen inflation come down, we've seen wages rise. That's shown that we're getting stuff done. Energy prices are coming down as well, Michael. And it's all well and good using fancy slogans that's been pre-prepared in focus groups, but actually what the Chancellor and the Prime Minister are doing is getting on with the job.
The Liberal Democrat candidate withdrew from the debate. 14 people are standing in the by-election. Polls open on the 5th of October. Ewan Petrie, STV News.
A third teenager has been arrested and charged in connection with a fire at the derelict Station Hotel in Ayr. Two boys, aged 13 and 17, were charged yesterday with willful fire-raising. Meanwhile, the Fire Brigade Union is warning service cuts delayed their response to the incident on Monday evening. They say crews had to wait 20 minutes for a high-reach vehicle from Kilmarnock. The Scottish Fire and Rescue Service said the delay didn't impact the outcome of the incident.
Real frustration at the fact that the service are being forced into a position to continually cut. So 10 appliances this year, reduction of the height vehicles from 26 to 14. They're looking at possibly another 300 plus jobs being cut next year and a further 18 whole-time fire appliances being cut. So it's a general feeling of frustration and verging on anger.
It's feared young people will lose out amid plans to cut almost 40 council-run leisure and community centres in North Lanarkshire. The local authority bosses say they're facing tough decisions after a review into the condition of venues, usage and footfall. Caitlin Hutchinson has more.
Save our sharks!
These young swimmers should be in the pool training, but instead they're out in the cold, worried they might soon have nowhere to train at all.
I don't know what I would do actually.
We've been swimming here most of our life, so we don't really want to
lose it. If we train somewhere else, we might not get the same hours or the facilities that we do here.
Not only have we learned to swim, but we've learned how to compete and how to work as a team.
Some of the swimmers standing behind me just now, I've seen coming through from the early stages of the club all the way through, and to think kids of the future could be deprived of that opportunity is heartbreaking.
Save our Sharks!
A petition's been launched, backed by students, parents and the wider community.
As a parent, it's hugely disappointing that they're planning on closing this facility. But it's not just Logan I'm thinking of. There's another 100 children here today, and no club local to this area could accept 100 children.
5 of North Lanarkshire's 8 pools are up for closure within the next 2 years. But it's not just sports centres and swimming pools at risk. 39 sites are in scope by the council, including golfing facilities, libraries like this one, and community centres. And the karate club at Holytown Community Centre is ready to put up a fight.
In the past 50 years in this community centre, we have produced Scottish, British and European champions. And it's just been a devastating loss for these people because, as I keep saying, there is nowhere else in the area that they can train.
It'll impact students like Brandon, who represents Scotland in international level competitions.
This club really, it made me so much better at doing everything I'm doing now. All the other options for other karate clubs were very, very far away. The nearest was Dalkeith, about an hour.
North Lanarkshire Council wouldn't go on camera, but said they're dealing with insufficient funding from Holyrood. The Scottish Government says work is ongoing to establish a new fiscal framework for councils.
I do hope that the council pull back in the number of closures, get round the table and work out how these resources can not only be saved but enhanced, because investing in these resources is investing in the health and well-being of communities, and that can only be good for all of us.
A Crunch council meeting will take place tomorrow as the future of these venues hangs in the balance. Caitlin Hutchison, STV News, North Lanarkshire.
It's a packed sports desk tonight, isn't it, Rahman?
We like packed on, don't we? Yes?
You do.
I do. Right, let's give it to you then. Good evening. We start with football, and the 3 remaining League Cup quarter-finals take place tonight. Rangers face Livingston at Ibrox, and Brandon Cook looks ahead to this tie.
Well, Rangers last won the League Cup 12 years ago, and following Celtic's elimination from the tournament just last month, it's fair to say that Michael Beale's sides are firm favourites to lift the trophy this time round. The Ibrox side come into this match on a 3-game unbeaten run, their latest victory coming against Motherwell on Sunday afternoon.
Running on 4 competitions, which is great. We had the league last Sunday, then we had Europe in the week, and now we've got the League Cup on Wednesday. It's fantastic. And that's what we all come here for, and that's what we want to be involved in. And we prepare exactly the same as we do every game.
Now, tonight's quarter-final will be Livingston's first match since they came under new ownership. David Martindale's men reached the final of this competition 2 years ago, back in 2021, but they come into this game off the back of a 3-0 defeat to Celtic at the weekend.
It's going to be a difficult game of football. Both sets of players, both sets of staff are going into this one game away from Hampden. Celtic obviously have been knocked out of the cup, so it probably gives every other Premier League team just a wee bit of impetus to the probability, the chance of success gets that little bit higher.
Well, tonight's fixture follows some sad news to come out of Ibrox this afternoon. Rangers legendary forward Jim Forrest has died at the age of 79. Forrest was the most prolific forward in the club's post-war history. He scored 145 goals in just 163 games. A minute's silence will be held before the match, and players will wear black armbands as a mark of respect.
Well, ahead of Hibernian's quarter-final against St Mirren tonight, Jordan Abita says the players are enjoying the style of play Nick Montgomery is implementing. Montgomery has made a solid start since succeeding Lee Johnson as manager with 1 win and a draw. Hibs take on an informed Saints team. They sit second in the Premiership and are on a 10-match unbeaten run.
I think it's a style of play that we all enjoy, passing out from the back. Try and get the ball forward as quick as we can and try and get good link-up play and try and score goals. We always go in the game positive. got a chance to go semi-final at Hampton. Now I never played there before. Some of the boys have, and that's what I want to do. Try and play in the big games.
When I was up at Ross County, we won a semi-final. I ended up winning the final as well at this cup competition. So of course that's a good memory to have. It was a while ago now, so I'd like to refresh that and have my own taste here at St Mirren. So hopefully I can kind of replicate that, and we can go and get to Hampden in the semi-final, and we'll see where it takes us for there.
And in the other quarter-final, Ross County face Aberdeen. Well, Hearts are through to the League Cup semi-finals, and Stephen Naismith is calling on his players to back up last night's win over Kilmarnock by going on a consistent run in the league. George Grant put the Gorgie side one up shortly before half-time, before Brad Lyons levelled for Killie in the 68th minute. The tie appeared to be heading for extra time, but in the second minute of added time, Alex Lowry, who'd just come on as a sub, scored the winner for Hearts to seal a place in the last four. Scotland women's head coach Pedro Martinez-Losa has accused Belgium of deliberately trying to injure Caroline Weir during their Nations League draw at Hampden last night. The Real Madrid midfielder had to be subbed after just 20 minutes with a knee injury. The Scots went behind early in the second half, but Sophie Howard equalised in the 94th minute to secure a point.
I'm very angry. I think we have an injury of our best player, and deliberately the opponent was looking to contact her, and it's a duty of the referee to protect the players. I think that was is very, very important that we compete in this competition. The standards are at the high level.
Finally, rugby, and Ben Vellacourt admits he was surprised to be named co-captain of Edinburgh. The scrum half, who joined the Capital Club from Wasps 2 years ago, says he's very proud to be chosen. That, folks, that's just about all your sport from me tonight. Plenty more sports stories on our website. I'll see you again tomorrow.
OK, thanks very much, Rahman. Well, we heard earlier about Storm Agnes. Let's find out more and get the full forecast from Sean.
Things are hotting up. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
A very good evening to you. Well, of course, it's all about Storm Agnes tonight. The strongest winds at the moment around the Dumfries and Galloway coast, the Ayrshire coast, because we're in a strong southerly coming up through the North Channel and the Irish Sea. Strongest gusts of wind then transferring towards the Argyll and Bute coast later on tonight as those winds go from the southerly airflow to a westerly airflow. So a windy night for all of us. It's here in the southwest of the country. We're going to take the brunt of Agnes. Gusts of wind in the most exposed spots up to about 70-75 miles per hour. We've got our peak tide in Ayrshire around 11 o'clock this evening, so we'll get some big waves potentially overtopping the sea walls as well. So the possibility of some localised flooding with the heavy rain, also the sea spray in coastal parts. And of course, we've got those gusty winds. So a pretty wild night to come, and the storms go not overly significant, 75. It is still very strong, but at this time of year, given the trees are almost still in full leaf, we could get some branches coming down. Now, if they fall on railways or roads, that will cause a lot of disruption as we head into tomorrow morning. But the winds should be easing down a wee bit into tomorrow. It's still going to be very blustery, mind you. A lot of dry weather to start the day, and then we'll start to see some rain coming back in from the west later on. Top temperatures 17, 18 degrees further south and east. Another blustery day to come on Friday. Lots of showers. Saturday, that's the best day because it should be quieter, drier and brighter. Wet and windy again Sunday.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Oh, don't forget, Rona will have Scotland tonight this evening at the slightly later time of 11:10.
From all of us here, thank you for watching. Enjoy your night.
Good night.